"Count that cash faster, sweetheart." That's what he yelled. Loud enough to rattle the glass doors, loud enough to turn every single head in the branch. The line of customers stared like they were watching a car wreck in slow motion. The two junior tellers, fresh out of training, froze mid-stack, eyes wide, hands trembling over the banded bills. You'd think the man ran a military unit, not a mid-size credit union off Route 52. I slid the last stack of 20s into the drawer. Didn't rush, didn't flinch. Then I turned to him. I quit. The smug little smirk cracked. Just a flicker. Then he laughed, this choking, wheezing sound that filled the lobby and echoed off the damn marble tiles, like I just told a joke and he was the punchline. You can't quit. It's payday. We're swamped. I reached into my tote, calm as morning coffee, and pulled out a folded legal document. Walked it over to Melissa, the assistant manager who'd been mouthing "Oh my God" under her breath since the second he started yelling. "This branch is closed, effective immediately, for renovation." That's when the blood drained from his face. Hey, real quick, 97% of people listen to stories like this and forget to subscribe. If you're enjoying it so far, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps the team bring more of these to life. Now, back to the story. You could hear the tick of the wall clock above the entrance. That's how quiet it got. He snatched the paper from Melissa's hands and scanned it like it was written in alien. His lips moved while he read, which would have been funny if I hadn't spent 2 years of my life enduring his condescension. And that lease? Oh, I'd signed it. Just not as a teller. The bank didn't own the building. They leased it. Through Rose Park Holdings, a quiet little LLC that just so happened to be owned by yours truly. I watched him blink, then turn, then try to recover his footing like a drunk man realizing the bar stool's gone. "This is a prank," he muttered. "Some kind of joke. You're just a—" "Landlord," I said, cutting him off. "You'll find the notice was submitted via certified mail last month. You ignored it. That's on you." Melissa coughed into her hand, trying not to smile. "I'll call regional," he barked, already fishing for his phone like it was a grenade pin. "You should." I nodded. "They've been expecting this." He stared at me like I'd grown horns. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. See, when they brought him in last year, Mr. Big Market Transfer with his cheap ties and cheaper manners, I gave him 3 chances. The first time he mocked a pregnant teller for taking too many bathroom breaks. The second, he accidentally left the AC off in August and told us to toughen up. And the third, he docked my hours by 20 minutes for taking too long to sign off the vault, after staying late to balance an overage he created. That was the day I finalized the renovation notice. "You can't just shut down a bank," he snapped, voice rising. "That's illegal." I walked behind the counter, took off my badge, and slid it across to Melissa. "You might want to clear your desk," I said. "The contractors will be here in 10. He scoffed. "You think I'm scared of your little tantrum?" Outside, across the street, 3 white vans were already parked at the curb. No logos, just men in hard hats, clipboards in hand, waiting for my signal. I gave them a nod. Within 30 seconds, the lead stepped forward and taped a sign to the glass door. I didn't need to read it. I wrote it. Black letters on white paper. Interior structural work. Branch closed until further notice. The ATM lights flickered once, then died. I'd rerouted the power supply an hour ago. He shoved past the counter and ran to the front like he could tear the sign off by sheer rage. It didn't matter. The systems? Routed through my backup network. The vault timer? Now deactivated and scheduled for compliance scan. The cameras? Already backing up footage to my personal cloud. Everything he thought he controlled was just a rented show. I owned the stage. And now, curtain call. They all thought the branch's beating heart was the vault. The thick steel door, the keypad, the daily rituals of combinations and sign-offs. That was the illusion. The real artery, the one that fed everything, was the lease. And they never bothered to trace it. Not once. The systems? They didn't run on some corporate cloud. They ran through my private servers. Not by accident, not by oversight, by design. Years back, during that so-called restructuring initiative when they were firing seasoned staff like confetti and outsourcing the guts of the operation to third-rate vendors, I saw what was coming. So while they were too busy playing corporate musical chairs, I bought the damn building. Quietly. through Rose Park Holdings, an LLC I'd formed 2 months prior with a trust address and a neutral name that looked like every other real estate shell they had ever seen. The lease was just another annual line item for them. Nobody asked questions. Nobody ever does when the lights stay on and the rent clears. But the moment our new branch manager swaggered through those doors, barking names, snapping fingers, treating the place like a high school locker room with a fax machine, I knew he'd never even looked at the lease. He was the type who thought showing up in a Bluetooth headset and barking orders counted as leadership. Delegate and dominate, he told a teller once, like he was auditioning for a TED Talk hosted in hell. I gave him chances. Too many, maybe. But I knew better than to flinch early, so when the IT vendors shifted platforms without so much as an email my way, I didn't argue. I logged in, ran the trace, and compiled every connection, every packet, every port redirect into one simple archive. Folder name, Branch Lock Protocol. Not revenge. I don't waste my time with petty emotions. It was insurance, like a seatbelt or a fire extinguisher under the sink. You don't use it unless you have to, but when you do, it better work. There was a footnote in the lease I'd highlighted in yellow the day I signed it. Tiny print, tucked at the bottom of a compliance clause, like a whisper in a crowd. Landlord reserves the right to initiate emergency closure in the event of required structural inspection. Determination of necessity lies solely with the landlord or their designated agent. I was the landlord. And today, I was the designated agent. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that my authority didn't come from a job title. It came from the fact that every screw in this building, every ceiling tile, every patch of carpet was under my jurisdiction. And that emergency inspection? It began the moment I slid that document across Melissa's desk. As he fumbled with his phone and tried to remember who outranked who, the network was already folding into my mirror system. One by one, the terminals blinked, offline. The digital security protocol kicked in, cameras rerouted, card readers disabled. Phone reception? Already compromised, courtesy of the Faraday strips I'd had installed in the ceiling panels under the guise of signal-boosting insulation. Meanwhile, the contractors waited across the street, hard hats gleaming in the sun, permits in hand, ready to make it all official. They didn't look like much, but I handpicked them. Ex-union crew with municipal inspection backgrounds, the kind of men who knew how to look official even when ripping out drywall was just theater. All I had to do was wave, and when I did, that little footnote in the lease, it roared to life. Because in this branch, the vault wasn't the strongest thing in the building. I was. He thought locking my drawer would slow me down, like a flimsy little tumbler lock was gonna stop anything. After I handed in the closure notice, he stomped back toward my station, yanked the drawer shut like a toddler slamming a toy chest, then twisted the key and glared at me like he'd just seized a throne. I didn't even blink. Let him think he was in charge for 5 more seconds. That's about all he had left. He didn't know the panic button on the underside of the desk no longer alerted security. I'd rerouted it months ago, to a silent relay that pinged my private server. One press, and it kicked off a chain I'd rehearsed a dozen times in my head. Lockdown, isolation, control. He didn't know the cameras didn't upload to some central security node in Atlanta. They ran through my firewall, my firmware, my encryption. The feed he thought only corporate could see. I'd been archiving it for months, including every time he called staff dead weight or made jokes about who looked good in pencil skirts. Every eye roll, every hissed threat. All time-stamped. He didn't know that last Thursday, while he was out golfing with the regional boys, I had the breaker room rekeyed under the guise of a maintenance request. The new lock? Custom cut. Only 2 copies exist, one on my keyring, one in a safe deposit box. So while he was screaming at HR on speakerphone, pacing the lobby like a caged tiger who'd just noticed the bars were moving in, I stepped out the side door and into the sunlight. Across the street, the white van doors opened with that satisfying metallic click. 3 men stepped out, hard hats on, clipboards tucked under their arms, not even pretending to rush. The leader gave me a nod like we were old poker buddies, and in a way, we were. Except the stakes weren't chips. They were everything. Interior structural work, I told him, just loud enough for the woman at the front of the customer line to hear. Orders posted. Permits on the glass. The sign went up on the front door, taped right over the business hours. He hadn't even noticed yet. too busy shouting down the phone, trying to get someone from legal to call him back. Spoiler alert, they wouldn't. The regional team had been briefed last week. They just didn't tell him. When he finally turned to see what I was doing, his face twisted like he'd bitten into a lemon dipped in battery acid. "What the hell is this?" he barked, stomping toward the entrance. "Authorized work," I said, nice and calm, gesturing toward the printed permit. "Filed with the city, approved under Section 4.2. "You don't have that authority." I raised an eyebrow. "You sure about that?" He tried to shoulder past the contractor to rip the sign down, but the guy stepped sideways, blocking him with the effortless posture of a man used to being obeyed. Not because of who he was, but because of what was on his clipboard. Behind us, the security doors buzzed, then powered down. It was subtle. You wouldn't notice if you weren't looking. But the green indicator lights above the magnetic locks faded to nothing. And just like that, the branch was sealed from the inside. Key cards wouldn't work. Emergency latches wouldn't budge. Glass-rated locks engaged. I watched his hand hover over the door, ready to slam it open and scream bloody murder at the contractors. But it didn't move. He just stood there, breathing heavy, palm flat against a door that no longer responded to him. "That's not your system," he muttered. "It is now." The contractor handed him a copy of the permit. Stamped, signed, dated. My name on the line for authorized owner rep. And still, like some toddler refusing to believe the game was over, he tried one more time. "You don't get to do this." I already did. Then I turned my back to him. Because when you own the building, you don't need to argue. You just flip the switch. It didn't take long for the sidewalk to turn into a parade of panic. The lunch crowd rolled in right on cue. Teachers on break, small business owners needing change, contractors trying to cash checks. A solid 10-person line formed within minutes, pressed up against the glass, peering in with puzzled expressions. The front doors were locked, the lights dimmed, and the air inside had taken on that low hum of halted motion. He burst out from his office like a man possessed, shirt untucked, headset dangling, red-faced and rattled. "Just temporary maintenance, folks," he shouted, arms waving like he was herding cattle instead of people with lives and bills. "Technical issue. We'll reopen soon." No one moved. A woman near the front held up 3 payroll checks and squinted through the glass. "Why's the ATM off too?" He didn't answer, just blinked at her like she'd asked him for the square root of panic. Because the ATM wasn't just offline, it was dead. No glow, no card reader light, no connection. The screen displayed nothing but the faint outline of a system reboot that would never complete. He pivoted hard and ran back inside, nearly knocking over a potted plant by the vestibule. Through the tinted glass, I could see his jaw move, orders flying, veins pulsing in his neck. But the tellers weren't responding. They stood like mannequins, eyes locked on their screens that now displayed a clean, frozen message in white on blue. Branch 147, temporarily suspended for structural inspection. Reopening date. Pending. No cursor, no buttons, no escape. I had rerouted every terminal to my dormant mirror server the moment the security locks clicked. No transactions could process, no data could move. They weren't even on the corporate grid anymore. They were on mine. And the best part? The server wasn't malfunctioning. It was in maintenance mode, purposefully, safely, permanently until I said otherwise. He leaned over a teller's shoulder and started jabbing keys like he could brute force his way out. Caps, lock, escape. Ctrl, Plt, plus delete. Nothing. Just that message, stubborn and unmoved, like a tombstone etched in real time. I watched from across the street, arms crossed, leaning against the contractor van while sipping the iced coffee I'd bought an hour earlier. The contrast couldn't have been sharper, his chaos versus my calm. He was pacing like a zoo animal under floodlights. I was a lighthouse, watching the waves crash against the rocks I'd placed with surgical precision. He picked up the landline. I knew exactly what came next. Corporate switchboard. Press 1 for support. Hold music, then silence. Because the support line for system diagnostics routed through my server too. I'd mirrored the call forwarding protocol and suspended it under clause 5.3 of the lease. Tenant operations are subject to landlord's system compliance and infrastructure integrity. And right now, the infrastructure was under inspection. My inspection. He grabbed a dry erase marker and scrawled branch temp closed across the glass, like slapping on a handmade sign would undo what I'd already put in motion, but it didn't stop the questions. Is the vault secure? Why can't I use my online access? My direct deposit says pending. A man in a faded mechanic's uniform shouted, "You know what happens if these checks bounce, right?" From where I stood, I could see the fear start to creep up his spine, that twitch in his temple, the look of a man realizing that whatever crown he thought he wore had just dissolved in his sweaty little hands. He slammed his fist on the glass, eyes locking with mine for the first time. I didn't flinch, didn't blink, just sipped my coffee and held his gaze like I was watching a rerun of a show I'd seen 100 times. Because I had. Different actors, same ending, and we weren't even at intermission. At exactly 12 hours p.m., the hum stopped. The kind of hum you don't notice until it's gone. The ceiling fans, the faint buzz of fluorescent lights, the low drone of equipment and energy coursing through the walls like blood through veins. Gone. Like someone had pulled the plug on reality itself. The UPS backup clicked once, a quiet mechanical sigh. Then darkness. The lobby lights blinked twice and surrendered. The ATM outside didn't just go black. It bled out slow, like a ship sinking in plain view. The HVAC gave one last exhale and fell silent. I watched through the tinted glass as his shouting turned into something quieter. Not softer, just emptier. Like his voice realized it was echoing in a tomb. He ran across the tile in frantic loops, slipping once, catching himself on the teller counter. He snapped his fingers, clapped his hands, waved at the cameras like they were genies who owed him favors. In the break room, the microwave clock blinked 8888 as if time itself was glitching out. In his office, the screen that used to beam corporate dashboards and pointless Excel trackers now displayed a single white message on black. Server not found. He grabbed the phone off the hook and hit line 1. Dead. Line 2, dead. No dial tone, just the lonely static hiss of obsolescence. He yanked open his drawer, dug for his cell, and held it up like a lifeline. 1 bar, then none. He walked in a circle, turned toward the corner, held the phone near the window. Nothing. Like the walls were swallowing the signal. Because they were. I had the Faraday strips installed last spring, tucked behind the acoustic panels, woven into the drywall beneath the renovation budget he never reviewed. Signal shielding listed in the contractor notes. He didn't even ask what that meant. And now, no calls, no Wi-Fi, no escape. He staggered toward the teller line, motioning wildly, lips moving fast, probably telling them to reboot something, do something, fix something. But there was nothing left to fix. Because nothing was broken. It was all functioning exactly as intended. Controlled isolation, coordinated shutdown, Protocol 5C of the Emergency Landlord Clause, buried in the back of the lease packet. In the absence of verified system compliance, landlord reserves the right to revoke power, access, and infrastructural support to safeguard operational integrity. He hadn't read that far. He was too busy giving performance reviews that sounded more like stand-up routines at the expense of my staff. I'd warned him twice in writing. System instability noted. Requesting equipment audit. Ignored. I'd reported outdated fire system tests. Pending, they said. Ignored. Now there was no more pending. Now it was policy. I stood across the street beneath the shade of a tree, watching him pace behind blackout glass, looking smaller by the second. A man not just losing power, but realizing he never had any. The contractors sat on the edge of the van bed, sipping sodas, watching the show. He slammed the emergency exit door once. Hard. It didn't budge. Magnetic locks held. Someone from the crowd called out, "Hey, is it safe in there? Why's the air off?" He didn't answer. Maybe he couldn't. Because this wasn't just a power failure. This was a complete systemic shutdown, engineered, timed, and signed in blue ink by the one person in the chain of command he never bothered to learn about. Me. And upstairs, in the ivory towers of corporate, they'd feel the outage next. At 1:37 p.m., my phone lit up. No caller ID, just a number I recognized from every forwarded complaint and boilerplate memo over the last 5 years. Regional. I let it ring twice. Picked up on the third. "This is Carla." "Carla," he said, voice low, clipped. I could hear fluorescent lights buzzing in the background and the faint sound of someone typing furiously behind him. What's going on at branch 147? I didn't bother pretending. No small talk, no fake surprise. I tapped the screen, opened my inbox, and forwarded the file I'd been keeping warm for weeks. Check your email, I said. A pause, then the gentle ding of an incoming message on his end. I waited. This is the lease? He asked. Yes. And page 14? His voice shifted. I could hear him skimming. Faster, harsher, then silence. You bought the building? He asked, incredulous. 4 years ago, through Rose Park Holdings, fully compliant, transferred through a trust. Public record, if you're curious. And this shutdown? Pre-scheduled, logged through municipal inspection, all within rights, section 5.3 and 5.7. You'll see the permits attached. Another pause. A long one. He didn't shout. He didn't bluster like the branch manager. That's not how people in his position operate. They do math, legal math, PR math, operational math, and he was counting the zeros now. Lost transactions, customer complaints, social media flames, whatever bonus he just saw evaporate. Finally, a sigh. Can you fix this? There it was. Not barked, not begged, just asked. Like a man who'd suddenly remembered that the woman he'd once labeled non-essential personnel during a downsizing proposal might actually own the fuse box to his whole department. That depends, I said evenly. Are we speaking off record? He didn't answer right away, so I continued. Because if this is formal, I'll send everything through legal. I've documented the operational failures, non-compliance, environmental safety lapses, abuse reports. If you'd like to go that route, I'm ready. No, he said quickly. Let's keep this informal, for now. That was smart. I glanced back at the branch. He was still in there, my former boss, stomping through a dim building surrounded by powered-down terminals and confused staff who hadn't been told the truth yet. Still performing in a show where the stage lights had already gone dark. Then yes, I said, I can fix it. Not because he deserved it, but because the branch did. My team did. And this wasn't just about leverage. It was about setting the rules for who got to use it. He exhaled, relieved. Send over what you need, he said. I will, I replied. But I'd suggest reviewing clause 8.4 before you reply. Another silence. Then a faint click as he returned to the document. Because at the bottom of page 17 in the appendix, beneath a pile of lease language no one had ever read, sat the quiet little clause I'd written in myself when the holding company was formed, buried deep in the property rights revision section. Tenant misconduct or managerial negligence may trigger immediate landlord reevaluation rights, subject to remedy via direct negotiation. Translation: you don't get your power back until you deal with me. And now that the call was made, it was time for my terms. The email was short, precise, written the same way he used to edit my quarterly reports, redlining every adjective he didn't like and calling it tightening the narrative. Well, now the narrative was mine. Subject: reopening conditions. Branch 147, 5 bullet points. No apologies, no flattery, just the new rules of engagement. Full management reassessment of the branch, immediate removal of the current branch manager, direct report channel to regional for all future concerns, my systems reinstated with full visibility, lease renewed under the new compliance clause, non-negotiable no formatting, no PDF, no please advise, just plain text power. I sat with a laptop on my knees in the contractor van while the manager inside tried desperately to salvage whatever scraps of authority he still believed he had. The sun had started to dip, casting long shadows across the glass. Customers had cleared out after the third round of "we apologize for the inconvenience" signs were taped up. Melissa had texted me a photo from inside, him pacing, muttering, tapping the frozen terminals like they owed him a refund. I saved the photo. 3 minutes after I hit send, I saw the reply pop up. Subject: reopening conditions, branch 147. One line. Understood. Drafting termination now. No signature, no rebuttal. Just the weight of a career crumbling through a keyboard. I closed the laptop gently, like sealing a tomb. Clause 8.4 wasn't just boilerplate, it was the surgical knife I'd tucked into the body of the lease and kept sharp for years. Every compliance audit, every digital trail, every whispered complaint that he brushed aside, I documented it. I didn't argue. I didn't storm out. I filed. And now? Now they were forced to listen. I forwarded the confirmation to legal and CC'd facilities, just so there was no confusion about what was happening next. Melissa texted again. He's in the back office. HR just called. Of course they did. They were late, but not absent. I sipped the last of my lukewarm coffee and looked up as one of the contractors tapped the side of the van. Want us to start teardown prep? He asked. Not yet, I said. Give it 15. Across the street, I saw him emerge from the glass doors. Alone. No box yet. Just the look of a man who finally realized the building didn't answer to him. Not anymore. I didn't wave. I didn't smirk. This wasn't personal. It was policy. And when he stepped back in, it would be to clear out his desk. Under new management. Mine. He burst through the front doors at 4:02 p.m. like a man being exiled from his own kingdom. If the kingdom had been leased, micromanaged into dysfunction, and quietly rerouted under his nose. Clutching a worn cardboard box like it was a life raft, he shouted into a phone that no longer connected to anything. His voice cracked with desperation. But all I heard from across the street was static rage, wordless noise from a man whose audience had vanished. The box sagged in his arms. One of the flaps flopped open. A sad little desk plant poked out, already wilting from the heat. I recognized the cheap plaque inside. Excellence in Regional Onboarding. A participation trophy for people who knew how to forward emails and humiliate new hires. He glanced around, maybe hoping for someone to stop him. No one did. The sidewalk was empty, the parking lot still. Even the HVAC hum was gone. I leaned against the side of the contractor van, arms crossed, sunglasses on, just watching. I didn't need to gloat. The silence between us said everything. Behind him, one of the contractors peeled off the last temporarily closed sign and replaced it with a new one. Clean, white, bold black text. Branch temporarily closed for a strategic upgrade. The kind of language that means nothing to customers and everything to the people being quietly erased. I gave the crew a nod. Let's begin. No ceremony, no countdown. Just the sudden rise of drills buzzing against drywall, the metallic shriek of panels being unscrewed, the muffled thud of ceiling tiles hitting the floor inside. Not demolition, transition. Everything he thought was permanent, ripped out. The glass partition he used to stand behind like a general on a watchtower, gone in under 10 minutes. The corner office where he barked at people on speakerphone, gutted. The desk drawer he locked to feel powerful, disassembled, tagged for disposal. And the employee of the quarter wall he had framed with his own photo twice, that came down first. I stayed outside. Didn't need to be inside to know how fast things were changing. I'd written the blueprint. Literally. One of the contractors walked out, wiping sweat from his brow. You want the old signage down too? He asked, jerking a thumb toward the sun-faded letters above the branch entrance, ones he'd stood under for every arrogant morning arrival. Yes, I said. All of it. He nodded and went back inside. I turned slightly, just in time to see the ex-branch manager tossing his box into the back seat of a sun-baked sedan, slamming the door like it owed him dignity. He sat there for a long time, not starting the engine, just sitting, like maybe he finally got it, that this place wasn't his, never was. He just rented space in a building I owned. And now, even the lights inside were being rewired to listen to someone else. Me. 1 week later, I walked through the front doors of Branch 147 again, this time without tension in my shoulders or steel in my spine. The glass was new. No more fingerprint-smudged panes or fading posters about credit score myths. Clean, crisp transparency. Inside, the air smelled like fresh paint and purpose. The layout had shifted. Gone were the claustrophobic cubicles and manager's perch in the corner. The space was open now, welcoming, functional, no throne for anyone to bark from. The new manager stood near the welcome kiosk, young, steady-eyed, and smart enough to shake my hand without pretending he knew better. "Morning, Ms. Langley," he said. Respectful, no puffed-up ego, no limp handshake, just quiet competence. "Morning," I nodded. I stepped past him and approached the teller floor, placed my palm flat on the new biometric reader. A soft chime, then a green ring of light. The screens lit up. One by one, terminals booted, interfaces restored, accounts unlocked, internal systems realigned. The entire branch sighed back to life like a living organism regaining a pulse. Payroll resumed within the hour. Customers returned without hesitation, some curious, some relieved, all grateful that the chaos had ended and that their money still lived behind walls, built with more care than the man who used to guard them. The tellers smiled again, not out of fear, not because they were told to, but because the weather had changed and they could feel it. One of them, Rebecca, leaned over as I passed her window and whispered, "Do you think he'll come back, even to visit?" I smiled. Not wide, just enough. He had his payday, I said. That was it. No gloating. No need to explain who he was. The ghost had already left the building. I walked down the hallway toward the vault, still sealed, still humming with that low, steady purr of reinforced steel and encrypted locks. It hadn't changed. It hadn't needed to, because it was never the vault that failed. It was the people who thought they were above it, who forgot who signed the lease, who approved the systems, who could flick the lights off with one quiet nod. I stood there for a moment, just breathing in the peace, not because it was over, but because it was right. Behind me, the branch buzzed gently, transactions processing, printers humming, lives being managed. But the rules were different now. My rules. And for the first time in years, they were being followed.